The 2022 offseason is here officially. We talk about that and more next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens. I am your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is who covered this season with more props, odds, and lies than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And we're back here officially in the 2022 offseason. And it's a big deal, as the Super Bowl was yesterday or last night or yesterday afternoon, depending on what time zone you're currently in. The Los Angeles Rams defeating the Cincinnati Bengals 23-20 in a game that was pretty good. It was a pretty good game, all things considered. I mean, the Bengals seem to have it for most of it. The Rams lose a couple key pieces, and they end up pulling it out. And it's just a thing of veterans versus inexperienced guys, and there's a whole thing. So we'll talk about that Super Bowl here in the first segment. There were a couple former Ravens on the Rams who ended up getting rings. So that's really exciting, and I want to kind of talk about those guys. But with the offseason officially beginning today, as with the Super Bowl ending, it's offseason time. It's mock draft time. It's this, that, and the other time. Free agent previews time, end of season reviews time. We've done a bunch of it here already on Locked On Ravens. We're continuing it. There was some big news announced last night by a Raven himself who will be hitting the free agent market in March. So we'll talk about that in the second segment in Calais Campbell. And then in the final segment, we'll kind of dive into just, I guess, general Ravens news and notes and quotes from a coaching perspective, as the Ravens added a couple new coaches to their coaching staff. And we'll talk about those guys and just what the coaching staff is shaped up to be so far. But it is an exciting time with this offseason and a pivotal one, as we've talked about here before on the show, about just how important it is for Eric DeCosta and company to build a championship roster to keep up with the rest of the league that includes the Bengals, because it's huge. It really is. So we'll dive into all of that here. But with the offseason starting, that does not mean our content here on Locked On Ravens is ending or even slowing down, as we are a 5-day-a-week show every week, 365 days a year. Well, I guess 52 weeks a year, not 365 days, but we're 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. If you enjoy the content, you want Ravens content daily, every weekday, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're here, of course, in video and audio form on YouTube. That's video form. You can subscribe, where our first goal is 1,000 subscribers. We're getting really close, and it's been a really nice growth process there. So if you want to do that, I greatly appreciate it, and I already appreciate everybody who has already subscribed to the channel. And if you're listening in audio form, so Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, I appreciate you as well. Be sure to follow the show, turn notifications on, so you know when that content comes out. You just click a button to get to the latest show with the latest Ravens news and opinions. And also, be sure to follow me on Twitter at KOstriker34 and the Locked On Ravens account, which is Locked On Ravens. So let's dive into this here. A lot of stuff to talk about, but let's start off with the big game, the Super Bowl, which the Ravens should have maybe had a shot to play in if they didn't have injuries, but injuries happened. And there is a bit of health luck that goes into things, luck in general that goes into things. The Ravens, I think, we're one of the unluckiest teams, if not the unluckiest team in the NFL this season, but it's whatever. It's over. It's done. We're looking ahead here to 2022 for the Ravens, definitely. But this game was one, again, a really good game overall. It seemed like, especially in the second half, the Bengals were going to just run away with it at some point, because with the Rams losing Odell Beckham, Eric Weddle got injured, Matthew Stafford, it seemed like he was a little hobbled towards the end of the game, but he ended up seeming like he was moving around fine and whatnot. But in that second half, the Rams just could not move the football. They couldn't do it. Odell Beckham was such a huge part of what they were doing, and having that threat opposite of Cooper Kupp, I mean, that's a big thing. And when we talk about the Ravens, I'm going to try to relate it back to the Ravens when I can. When you're talking about the Ravens and what they have built in their receiving room, it's not necessarily they have a Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham, but they have quality pieces, and I'll say they have more depth of the position, but the Rams have more star power there, obviously, with Kupp just alone being such a star himself. But with the Ravens, you got Marquise Brown, you have Devin Duvernay, James Prochet, Rashad Bateman, all these players. And you can kind of work defenses with them. Whereas the Rams, I mean, they were working with Van Jefferson, who didn't have an amazing game. Congratulations to him on his newborn child that actually happened after the game. But, from a football perspective, he got the victory, but, he wasn't doing a ton. You had a couple of other guys who had to step up, but without Beckham, without Higbee, the Rams just could not do anything. But here's the thing. Running the football for the Rams was just they couldn't do it. The Bengals, to their credit, did a phenomenal job stopping the run. Something that the Ravens also did really, really well, and that forced the Rams to be one-dimensional and to throw the football. And they were sending a ton of help over to Cooper Kupp, and obviously as they should. They held him under 100 yards for the entire game. I mean, he did have 2 touchdowns, which were huge, but to their credit, they were able to hold him to under 100 yards. So with the Bengals making the Rams so one-dimensional on offense, because literally it was every play, Cam Akers, -1 yard, Cam Akers, 1 yard, Cam Akers, no yards, Sony Michel, negative. It was really, really, really bad. The negative yard plays, it was not great. So in making the Rams one-dimensional and forcing them a bit, I'm not going to say out of their comfort zone, but making them throw the ball to receivers who just weren't, used to getting as much run as they were with the injuries to Beckham and obviously Higbee, who didn't play. It was a big thing. And so for Matthew Stafford to lead a drive after having so many, it was negative yards, negative. So it's stuff like that, where Stafford leading that drive down the field after the Rams couldn't do anything after getting 3 and outs, -1 yards, -2 yards, -3 yards on drives sometimes, or just flat out not being able to do anything. That was very, very impressive. And then obviously the penalties towards the end for the Bengals on defense were not ideal for them. The Logan Wilson hold, was it there? Was it not? Probably should have been a no call. I mean, there was a little tug there, but the T. Higgins face mask on Jalen Ramsey was egregious, and there were probably a couple makeup calls in there for that. So I don't know. But at the end of the day, you had Eli Apple on Cooper Kupp. And I think you can guess who won that matchup, even if you weren't watching the game. It was a negative play for Eli Apple and a positive play for Cooper Kupp. So good thing for those Rams to have a guy like Cooper Kupp still in the game. And the thing about Eli Apple, which is just, Eli Apple after this game got toasted on social media. And it's crazy because the thing for me in this situation is Apple is, no offense, not that good. So the fact that he has alienated himself, if you haven't kept up, Eli Apple's been causing quite a bit of drama on Twitter with fans, with players from other teams. So he has pretty much alienated himself from at least 4 franchises, Baltimore, New Orleans, the Giants, and the last one is escaping me for some reason, but it's really important, and I don't know why I'm forgetting it. But regardless, and the Chiefs with Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman. So, those 4 franchises, Eli Apple, there is probably a less than 0% chance he goes to them. He's alienating himself from franchises that, there's no guarantee he gets a contract because, again, no offense, he's not a great cornerback right now. So that whole thing, but yeah, Apple didn't have a wonderful game in this one. Jesse Bates made a really huge play for the Bengals. Joe Burrow, that Rams defense, give him credit. Give him a ton of credit. Aaron Donald, he wasn't doing much in the first half. The Rams created more one-on-ones for him. Joe Burrow's phenomenal against the blitz. Joe Burrow is really, really good against the blitz. So the Rams were trying not to get in a situation where he could burn them by using the short passing game, because the best way to beat a blitz, or one of them, is to use the short passing game. Teams use that against Don Martindale defenses against the Ravens. We have seen that firsthand if you've watched the Ravens. So then the Rams started to rush a 5th guy. That created more one-on-one situations for Aaron Donald, where he dominated Joe Burrow, was sacked 7 times. That is tied for the most in Super Bowl history. So the Bengals will have a lot of work to do on their offensive line. But, hey, congratulations to Eric Weddle, right? He is a Super Bowl champion. Unfortunately, it's with the wrong team. Should have been with the Ravens. But still, no one more deserving than Eric Weddle for what he has given to the game coming out of retirement, sitting on his couch. Ingraven, said he hopped up off his couch and got a ring. So good thing Eric Weddle was able to get this. I'm really happy for him. A few more former Ravens. You had Darius Williams, who was with the team and has turned into a very solid corner for them. Adrian Ely, that name sounds familiar, doesn't it? Adrian Ely signed a futures contract with the Rams a couple days ago. So technically he's a champion, I guess. You also have Blake Countess, who was inactive but played for the Ravens during the 2021 season, but signed with the Rams practice squad for the playoffs, kind of like what Tramon Williams did last year with the Ravens, them going to the Packers. So, yeah, overall, this was a big win for the Rams. They went all in on this. I mean, they really, really, if they did not win, it would have been horrible for that franchise because they are going to be in for some major changes. Aaron Donald could potentially retire, the reports are. Andrew Whitworth is seemingly out. Eric Weddle said he is re-retiring after he tore his pectoral muscle in the first quarter and played through it. What? That's unbelievable. I mean, what a tough guy for him to do that. But yeah, in the Super Bowl, I mean, like Joe Burrow injured his knee. He was not coming out of that game, regardless of what the injury was. He was not coming out. You saw how it pained Odell Beckham to be on that sideline after what is not confirmed, but probably is a re-tear of his ACL. So, it's unfortunate for Beckham, but yeah, the Super Bowl was a good one. Hopefully in 2022, 2023, we see the Ravens as that AFC North representative in the Super Bowl. But for now, the Bengals, they fall short as the AFC representative, and they now go back to the drawing board in hopes of returning there next year. But we'll head into our first break. When we get back, we're diving into Calais Campbell and if the Ravens should bring him back and what he announced in terms of his NFL future. So stay tuned for that, and we will be right back. This time of year, people are pretty much giving up on their New Year's resolutions, but don't do it this year. Stick to your resolution to eat right if it is your resolution, and do it thanks to Built Bar. If you haven't tried the Built Bar Puffs, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. The Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, marshmallowy, and they're not just a protein bar. They're a treat. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and the Puffs are included in that. So they're low calorie, high protein. You can replace your candy bars with these because they're simply just better. You can go to built.com. You can scroll down to the macro chart. You can be blown away by all of the high protein, low calories, high fiber, low carbs that the bars have to offer. They contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. And there are plenty of flavors to choose from. So go to built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15. You get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. We're back here. It's our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with you. And now as we dive in to the Ravens offseason, as we're kind of going to pivot away from the Super Bowl talk for now, Calais Campbell on a Super Bowl show with Sky Sports, so I guess a little more Super Bowl in there, he talked about his NFL future and was kind of asked about it by one of the hosts back in the studio. And, the host said, look, I'm not trying to break any news here, but does this mean you're not retiring? Because Campbell was talking a bit about what it meant to play in the Super Bowl, this, that, and the other. And Calais Campbell said, oh, no, yeah, I'm not retiring. I'm not retiring. So, and a kind of an official announcement by the player himself. So, hey, I'm going to take it and say he's not retiring. And so Calais Campbell coming back. Now, here's the situation, though. Calais Campbell will be an unrestricted free agent. And after 2 years with Baltimore, there are varying opinions as to whether Campbell should come back. Now, I personally believe he should, but the caveat here is that they cannot pay him what they were paying him. So I'm looking at Campbell's contract. Campbell ended up having a 2-year, $25 million contract with the Ravens, and the Ravens were able to restructure and kind of do stuff with his cap hit and his dead cap and signing bonuses, guarantees, incentives, and everything. So his base salary in 2020 was only $5 million, and in 2021 it was only $2 million. But the signing bonuses were $5 million each year. He had a cap hit of $10 million in 2020, $13 million in 2021. Now, when looking at what Campbell brings to the table from a statistic perspective, I mean, he's been a very quality player for a very long time. I mean, he has been a definition of health for the most part, although in Baltimore he has missed a couple games with injuries. He's played in a lot of games, 213 in his entire career, 27 with the Ravens. We'll stick to his Ravens career. So in 2 years with the Ravens, 77 total tackles, including 5.5 sacks. He has a fumble recovery and just a bunch of other really nice things that he does that aren't picked up by the box score. And it's important to note those things because Campbell has a very high double team rate in the NFL. I mean, teams do not want him to wreak havoc. He is somebody he is a monster player. His height speaks for itself. He's 6'8", 300 pounds. That's somebody who you don't want running through the middle of the line there. So I think for Campbell to have him come back to Baltimore, it would be big, but you can't have a cap hit of $10 million for Campbell. I don't think that's probably the absolute maximum cap hit I'd have for him. I would not go above that. I think when you're looking at what you want out of a guy who is up there in age, admittedly, he's 35 years old, will turn 36 right before the season starts. September 1st is his birthday. You have to understand that he's not playing 90% of snaps anymore or 80% of snaps anymore. Somebody who you can manage in a role that suits him. And because of that, you're not going to pay him like he's playing 90% of snaps. Now, I'm not saying Campbell does not have value. I think the Ravens should absolutely try to get a deal done with him in a role that suits him with a cap hit and money area that suits him. So when I'm looking at Calais Campbell, what I would give him, the Ravens were able to get Justin Houston for around $2 million as a cap hit. That is insanity. I mean, Justin Houston at that price is unbelievable. So if Campbell is really set, Campbell during that segment with Sky Sports was talking about the Super Bowl and just how important it is and what it means to him and how badly he wants to be there. If he believes the Ravens give him the best chance to do that and he believes in this team and he loves being with the team, then I would not be shocked if he takes kind of a discount and says, hey, you know what? I'm going to do this so that we can improve our team. Let's go out there and let's get this ring. So maybe he can sign for a $3 million cap hit, $5 million cap hit. I would be happy with him anywhere it's $7 million and below. I think that's where I'd be like, hey, this is awesome. This is great. I mean, the Ravens had Jimmy Smith at a 1 year, $6 million deal in 2021. So if they're paying him that, maybe a mil over, I think he provides more value. Now, part of the thing with Campbell is when he was brought to Baltimore, he was supposed to be a guy who was going to generate all this interior pressure and get all these sacks. I mean, in Jacksonville, during his 3 years in Jacksonville, he was insane at getting to the quarterback. He had 31 and a half sacks in Jacksonville in 3 seasons. That's over 10 sacks a year. In 9 years in Arizona, he had 56 and a half sacks, but in Baltimore in 2 years, just 5.5. So that's an issue. 4 in 2020, 1.5 in 2021. Now, we've talked a lot about the pressure issues, the sack issues, and how much of it is on execution with players, how much of it is on scheme with Don Martindale. I think a better scheme can get him schemed up to get more pressures and more sacks. But I also think that it is a product of him slowing down a little bit, right? And that's just a reality that I think many people have to deal with when looking at Campbell and just saying, how productive can he be? Now, me advocating for Calais Campbell coming back also does not mean that I'm on team, hey, bring the whole defensive line back, let's run it back. The Ravens do need changes on that defensive line. Now, Campbell and Brandon Williams play different positions, right? They provide different things. But I do think you have to get younger. I think you bring back one veteran and you say, hey, look, we're going to let you do something else. We're going to let you go in a different direction for the other veteran. Now, whether that is bringing back Williams and letting Campbell walk or bringing back Campbell and letting Williams walk, I think, you can decide which one based off of what you want and what you think the team is in better position to go out and get in free agency or in the draft who fits this team better. But I think Campbell can be more of a versatile piece than Brandon Williams. I think Brandon Williams has still provided value to the Ravens, but has also slowed down a bit. So if I have to choose between the Ravens re-signing Brandon Williams and re-signing Calais Campbell, it is more of a tough decision than I think people anticipate. And, if you actually think about it, it could be, but I am going with Calais Campbell in that. And I think, for what he has brought from a leadership perspective as well, not saying Brandon Williams has been a leader, but just pivoting back to Campbell himself without talking about anybody else, for what Campbell's brought from a leadership perspective, I think is very, very important. Because for guys like Justin Madubuike and Broderick Washington, to have veterans in the room is important. That's why I'm not saying just get rid of every veteran, completely tear it down, bring in every young guy, draft a ton of guys. They should draft a defensive lineman. They absolutely should draft at least one. I love Larry Ogunjobi from the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll talk about him and of course, other free agent targets as the 2022 offseason continues on here, as this is only the first official day since the Super Bowl did end. But yeah, I think if you can re-sign Calais Campbell, bring in Ogunjobi, get Derek Wolfe back healthy. Derek Wolfe was one of the best run stuffers in the NFL during the 2020 season. If you can get him back, and obviously it depends, how's he feeling injury-wise? Is that gonna slow him down at all? That's important to note. But I think for a guy like Campbell, he is, I think, a valuable piece still. Even if it is just a 1 year, hey, last ride type of deal, he's only playing 60% of snaps. I mean, Calais Campbell played you could almost argue it was too many snaps in 2021, especially early on in the season, because the Ravens just they didn't have a ton of guys to eat up snaps, because especially with Brandon, or not Brandon Williams, with Derek Wolfe being out, Campbell had to step up. And we had talked about how, hey, look, the Ravens veterans they're three guys, Wolfe, Williams, and Campbell, their snaps would probably go down. But when looking at actual defensive line snaps, Calais Campbell played the most by about 130. Campbell played 617 total snaps. The next closest on the entire defensive line, so defensive tackles and defensive ends, was Justin Madubuike, who played 484. So just around 130, that difference there. That's a lot for Campbell, who, I mean, was playing at the beginning of the year was 70, 57, 75, 69, 75, 79, 75, 74, 74, 73. And then he started to, you missed a game or two here, and then it was 82, then again, more timeout, then 72, 75. He's not playing that if he comes back. I think he's playing 60 or 55% of snaps at a maximum. Maybe you'll get 70% out of him 1 or 2 games, but you're not looking at a 617 snap player, even if it only was in not the full amount of games, even if it only was in 15. You're not looking at a player who I think is going to get all those snaps if he's coming back. You're going to want to give some of the snaps to the younger guys, keep Campbell fresh, which I just think is so important, especially for the older veterans on that line who, the trenches are a tough place to play for anybody. So I think if that is what you're looking at, if Calais Campbell says, hey, let's go win this ring, I will, we can negotiate something here that works for both of us and can benefit both sides. I think that's awesome. If he's looking for more of a payday, I'm not sure that's the best fit. And then the Ravens might have to go in a different direction. But it seems like Campbell's very, very hung up on winning a Super Bowl. He deserves it. And if he thinks Baltimore is the best place for him to do so, I'm all on board. Bring the big fella back. But we'll head into our final break here. When we get back, we'll be diving into some of the new coaching hires the Ravens reportedly have made on Friday before. So stay tuned for that, and we will be right back. Football might be over for the season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance, props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. So go to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back with our final segment here of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Osterberger, of course, still here with you. And now as we transition into the coaching side of things, as obviously there's a lot of importance on the players, but hey, the coaches are important too, right? The Ravens have been literally the definition of coaching carousel this offseason. I mean, coaches leaving, coaches coming in, coaching being parted ways with, coaches this, coaches that. There has been a lot of change in the Ravens coaching room. And, as big as I guess we'll call it swap of Don Martindale for Mike McDonald at the defensive coordinator spot, you have a lot of turnover and a lot of change. And I think it is good. It is good change. Now, the Ravens have lost some very skilled coaches, but I think the ones they are bringing in do make me excited. And so we've talked about a lot of those changes. And as the news is kind of broken, we've dedicated a part of the show to talking about them because, here on Locked On Ravens, I do value getting into every little transaction because it does keep everybody up to date with the team as a whole. And no one's left in the dark in terms of, they hired this guy 3 weeks ago. Why didn't I hear about it? So I try to keep it as, hey, this is what happened, even if it's little. So let's talk about these two coaches here. I kind of talked about Ryan Osborne a bit on the show before this was reported by Jeffrey Bick of The Athletic. And this was reported by Michigan media a little while ago. So that's why I kind of talked about it. But Osborne is a great coach who will come over, who worked at the University of Michigan, worked with Mike McDonald, obviously, and this is expected, right? McDonald definitely wanted to bring a couple guys over from Michigan, it feels like, and Osborne is somebody who is credited with working with the edge players in that program. So Aiden Hutchinson, David Ajabo, he's credited with working with the line, the defensive line, including those edge guys, which I think is huge because one, I mean, Ajabo could be the Ravens pick at 14. I would love that. But two, for young edge rushers such as Adafe Owe and Dalen Hayes, and hopefully Tyus Bowser, who is turning into more of a veteran, and also hopefully that Achilles injury can heal. He'll be back by John Harbaugh's timeline, which is well before the season starts. It's good to have a coach who can push it to that next level. And he is going to join the Ravens not as the actual outside linebackers coach, but more in a quality control position. The actual outside linebackers coach is going to be Rob Leonard, who will be the actual replacement for Drew Wilkins. And Leonard spent time with the Miami Dolphins for a while. He also has been with the New York Giants. Now, his most recent experience was with the Miami Dolphins as their outside linebackers coach, but actually does have that experience with the defensive line, which helps a lot and gives him coaching versatility, which, we talk about player versatility all the time. It's like, oh, this guy can line up here and line up there and do this and do that. But for a coach to understand multiple nuances of the game, whether it is college or pro, it is, I think, very, very important. And so Leonard will come in and work with those young outside linebackers, and we'll see what ends up happening with the other, pending free agents, Justin Houston, Pernell McPhee, some of those other guys. So the Ravens outside linebacker room is one that I think a lot of people understand there has to be more production out of in terms of some sacks and this, that, and the other. The Ravens, of course, as I've said before on the show, have not had a 10-plus sack player in a single season since Terrell Suggs did it in 2017. And we all know that in 2018, the Don Martindale man himself took over as a defensive coordinator. So maybe Mike McDonald in that scheme will help a little bit, these new coaches. But in terms of it seems like the staff is pretty much all filled out now, right? With George Godsey being hired as a tight ends coach, and you're kind of pretty much all full with the roles on this staff right now. And it's kind of crazy to say because we've seen this guy leave and this guy come in and this guy leave and this guy come in. So it's been like, how many openings do they have? That we don't really know because it's so fluctuating right now. But it seems like everything's done. Maybe we'll see one or two smaller hires, but the Ravens, I feel like, have done a good job once again. And as we talked about this during the 2021 offseason, where every year it seems like the Ravens are a coaching factory. And you can even talk about executive factory too, where these guys, the Giants, whoever it may be, they try to almost model themselves off of the Ravens. There was like one or two rumblings of that I heard where, the Giants are trying to model their organization off of what the Ravens do. And that's why they interviewed Joe Ortiz, right? It's all stuff like that. So I'm excited about where this coaching staff is going. And they seem, at least over these past couple seasons, they seem to have given a more of almost, hey, we're bringing in experienced guys, but we're also bringing in more of the, younger inexperienced, but has a lot of potential type guys as well. And I think it's a good balance to have. You don't want to go into an offseason or into a season in general and just say, hey, we're bringing in 10 veteran coaches. We're not going with any potential here. Veteran coaches are awesome, right? They bring a lot of experience, whether it's been in a coordinator position, a head coaching position, or whatnot. They do a lot for an organization, but I think at the end of the day, you have to look at the Ravens as a team that loves developmental players, and they're also going to love developmental coaches where they're able to view that potential in somebody and say, hey, you can do a lot for us right now, but imagine you in 2-3 years when you've worked with these guys and you're learning as yourself as a coach. That's also something that's really good. So, if you want to talk about 2021 where they brought in like Anthony Weaver and Rob Ryan, it's more of the like, hey, I know those guys, but then also you bring in like Danton Lynn, who's Anthony Lynn's son, and a couple other younger coaches. And then this year it's bringing in the relatively, some known, some unknown guys, but like Zach Gore is an up and coming coach who is known in the Baltimore area. Obviously, you have Rob Leonard, who has some experience. George Godsey has some experience. So it's that balance that I think is very, very important. The Ravens do a very good job with it. And on John Harbaugh's staff, he believes in those guys. He does a very diligent job in terms of figuring out, hey, this is who I want to hire. This is the right fit for this organization. Because for the Ravens in general, they can be very particular about who comes in this organization. They're a team that values their culture. They want to have guys who understand what it's like to play like a Raven, coach like a Raven, do whatever, right? We've seen them turn talent away because of whether it's off-field issues or fits or whatever. That has happened. So for guys to be hired by this organization, they have to think very highly of them. I'm not saying every hire has been a home run or a slam dunk. There have been hits. There have been misses, just like in player personnel. There have been hits. There have been misses. Nobody is perfect with the hires, but it does seem like the Ravens understand that it's not just the players that have to, keep up with the rest of the NFL, it's the coaching staff as well. And for a team that has a lot of questions in that coaching room in terms of who is going to be able to perform well, is Greg Roman going to be able to grow this offense once again? Will Mike McDonald be able to come in and have a positive impact as a first-year NFL defensive coordinator, the youngest defensive coordinator in the NFL? We'll see. But for right now, it seems like the Ravens have a plan. And as the offseason continues, we'll talk about that plan here on Locked On Ravens and dive into free agency, the draft, and much, much more. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be diving into more Ravens talk, of course. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you tomorrow.